16 Iranian warships gone in 48 hours. That's not a prediction. That's what just happened. And it started because Iran touched one thing it should never have touched. The dominoes are falling now, and every single piece that drops triggers 3 more behind it. This is the military domino effect in real time, and you're watching the first row collapse. Here's what set everything in motion. March 11th, Strait of Hormuz, 3 ships burning. The Thai registered Mayuri Nari absorbed 2 projectiles 11 nautical miles north of Oman and erupted into flames that forced 20 crew members to evacuate immediately, while 3 skeleton crew stayed behind, waiting for rescue that might never come. The Japanese container ship One Majesty took a hit 45 kilometers northwest of Ras Al Khaimah. Minor damage above waterline, but the message was unmistakable. The Marshall Islands flagged Star Gwynth got struck 50 kilometers northwest of Dubai. Hull compromised while at anchor. 3 attacks. 3 different vectors. One calculation, Iran was betting everything on a single strategic chokepoint. But here's what Iran's military command didn't account for. When you knock over the first domino in a chain where the other side controls all the pieces behind it, you don't get to choose when the cascade stops. The Mayuri Nari was still burning when the U.S. response began. Not hours later, not the next day. 13 minutes after President Trump posted his warning about mine-laying vessels on Truth Social. He posted again, I am pleased to report that within the last few hours, we have hit and completely destroyed 10 inactive mine-laying boats and or ships, with more to follow. 10 vessels gone before the fires on the Mayuri Nari were even extinguished. That's domino number 2, and it fell faster than Iran's regime could process what was happening. You want to understand why this matters? Let's talk about what the Strait of Hormuz actually is. 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, which sounds spacious until you realize that tanker traffic doesn't spread across the entire waterway. Shipping lanes are roughly 2 miles wide for inbound, 2 miles for outbound, separated by a 2-mile buffer. That's 6 miles of choke point that 17 million barrels of oil pass through every single day. Not every week, every day. 88% of all oil leaving the Persian Gulf flows through this 6-mile corridor that Iran believed it could control. Admiral Michael Gilday, former Chief of Naval Operations, stated in congressional testimony, the Strait of Hormuz represents the single most critical energy choke point in the world. Its closure would constitute an immediate threat to global economic stability. Iran knew this. The entire strategy was built on leverage through chaos. Ebrahim Zolfikari, spokesperson for what's left of Iranian military command, wasn't subtle about the goal. Get ready for oil to be $200 a barrel because the oil price depends on regional security, which you have destabilized. Oil had already spiked to $120 per barrel before stabilizing around $90 on hopes the conflict might de-escalate. Iran's play was simple: make the strait impassable, force oil to $200, and suddenly you have negotiating power that your military capabilities can't provide. Forbes called it Iran's real nuclear option in an analysis published March 9th, 2 days before the attacks. The article argued that the U.S. doesn't need to worry about a nuclear weapons program that hasn't reached maturity. The real threat is Iran pulling the strategic lever on the Strait of Hormuz by making it impassable for an extended period. Iran pulled that lever, the domino fell, and the cascade that followed wasn't what Tehran expected. Because here's where the domino effect accelerates into something Iran's planners couldn't have modeled. Those 10 mine-laying vessels destroyed in the first wave, that was just the opening move. 6 more were eliminated within the next 18 hours as U.S. Central Command confirmed strikes were continuing on an almost hourly basis, all in different locations and directions in Iran. Max Afterburner, defense analysts tracking the campaign in real time, identified footage showing the complete destruction of Iran's last 4 Shahid Soleimani-class corvettes. An entire class of warships wiped off the map. Not damaged, not degraded, eliminated. The numbers started rolling in as the dust settled. Over 5,500 targets struck since Operation Epic Fury began in late February. More than 60 of those targets were Iranian warships. But here's the critical detail. Most analysis misses 5,500 targets doesn't mean 5,500 munitions. Hardened bunkers require multiple strikes. Underground facilities need sequential hits with penetrator weapons. The actual munitions expenditure is significantly higher, which creates the next domino in the chain. Preston Stewart, military logistics analyst, identified the sustainability problem. Those cannot all be done with standoff munitions. We do have a lot of Tomahawks. We do have a lot of ATAS-MS. We do have a lot of long-range cruise missiles. We don't have enough to be carrying out 500 attacks a day, every day. For the foreseeable future, 500 targets per day averaged out over 11 days of operation. The math forces a shift from expensive standoff weapons to guided bombs, which means increased reliance on air superiority and close-range strike packages. That's another domino, because maintaining air dominance over Iran requires different resources, different risk profiles, different strategic calculations, and Iran. Iran's watching its naval capacity evaporate in real time and realizing the domino chain it started is now completely out of its control. The regime bet that attacking commercial shipping would create international pressure on the U.S. to negotiate. Bloomberg outlined the two scenarios Iran was hoping for. Either the strikes lead to peace negotiations prompted by pressure to reopen the waterway that carries 20% of global seaborne oil, or chaos continues and oil prices skyrocket as shipping companies avoid the strait entirely and take longer, costlier routes. Both scenarios benefit Iran by giving it leverage it doesn't have through military capability alone. Except there's a third scenario that Iran's planners didn't put on the board, the one where the U.S. response is so overwhelming, so immediate, and so sustained that Iran's ability to threaten the strait gets systematically dismantled before oil prices can climb high enough to matter. That's the scenario playing out right now, and each U.S. strike triggers the next domino in Iran's strategic collapse. Trump's March 10th warning wasn't diplomatic posturing. It was a clearly marked line if Iran has put out any mines in the Hormuz Strait, and we have no reports of them doing so. We want them removed immediately, if for any reason mines were placed, and they are not removed forthwith. The military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before. He even offered the off-ramp. Pulling back on mines and stopping ship strikes will be a giant step in the right direction. Iran had the choice. Stop now, or watch what happens when you force the U.S. to demonstrate what a level never seen before actually means. Iran chose to find out. The Mayari Nari, One Majesty, and Star Gwynth were struck after that warning was issued. That was the moment the domino chain became irreversible, because Trump had publicly committed to consequences and Iran had publicly defied him. What followed wasn't just retaliation. It was a demonstration designed to show every other regional actor what happens when you test whether America's red lines are real. Those 16 mine-laying ships and corvettes, they're gone because Iran needed to learn in the most visceral way possible that the Strait of Hormuz is the leverage point Tehran thought it was, not when the other side can strike hourly, systematically, across multiple axes simultaneously. U.S. Central Command stated the operations were designed to be unpredictable, dynamic, and decisive, and the result has been Iran scrambling to respond to attacks coming from directions it can predict on timelines it can counter. But here's the domino that's falling right now, the one that determines what happens next. Iran still has options in the Strait of Hormuz. The large warships are gone, the mine-laying capacity is destroyed, but the fast attack boats, those are still operational, and they're exactly the kind of asset that works in the tight confines of a 6-mile chokepoint. Small, fast, armed with drones or rockets, capable of hitting a target and disappearing before response forces can engage. The Strauss Center for International Security and Law points out that the Gulf region relies on the Strait of Hormuz because pipeline options are limited. Iran knows this. The regime in giving up control of passage through the strait without deploying every remaining asset it has. Which means the domino effect isn't finished, it's accelerating. Every fast boat Iran sends out triggers another U.S. strike. Every U.S. strike depletes another portion of the munitions stockpile, forcing more reliance on closer range engagement. Every closer range engagement increases the risk profile for American pilots and ships. Every increased risk requires more support assets, more coordination, more resources dedicated to a single choke point. The chain reaction Iran started by attacking 3 ships is now a self-sustaining cycle, where each action forces a reaction that creates the conditions for the next action. And the clock is ticking, because 500 strikes per day isn't sustainable forever, but Iran's military capacity also isn't infinite. Dr. Jeffrey Lewis, director of the East Asia Non-Proliferation Program, noted in recent analysis, we're watching a race between depletion curves. Can the U.S. degrade Iran's ability to threaten the Strait faster than U.S. munition stockpiles force operational tempo to slow? That's the question neither side can answer with certainty right now. That uncertainty is the final domino waiting to fall, the one that determines whether this ends with Iran's complete inability to threaten commercial shipping, or whether the U.S. has to shift strategies before that goal is achieved. Either outcome creates ripple effects across the entire region, because every other actor is watching to see which depletion curve wins. If Iran's capacity collapses first, the message is clear: challenging U.S. control of critical waterways is strategic suicide. If U.S. operations have to slow before Iran is fully neutralized, the message is equally clear: America's conventional overmatch has limits that can be tested. 16 warships in 48 hours. That's where we are right now. But that's not where this ends, because the domino chain Iran triggered on March 11th is still falling. Every ship Iran strikes, every fast boat it deploys, every drone it launches pushes the next piece over. And on the other side, every U.S. strike, every target destroyed, every hour of sustained operations pushes back. This isn't a chess match where someone makes a move and waits for the response. This is both sides knocking over dominoes simultaneously, and whichever chain reaction completes first determines control of the choke point that moves 20% of the world's oil. The Mayuri Neri is still damaged, sitting somewhere in the strait, waiting for full salvage operations. Iran's 16 destroyed vessels are sitting on the bottom of the Persian Gulf, and the next domino in the chain is already teetering, because Iran's fast attack boats are being positioned right now for strikes that will trigger the next wave of U.S. retaliation, which will trigger the next Iranian response, which will trigger the next escalation. The first row of dominoes has fallen, the cascade is underway, and nobody, not Iran, not the U.S., not the shipping companies desperately trying to navigate through the chaos, can stop the chain reaction until one side runs out of pieces to knock over. The question isn't whether more dominoes will fall. The question is whose dominoes run out first.